to Real Estate en Route, and today I am in Edmonton, Alberta with Juli Wenger.
Hi.
Yeah, I am so excited to be here. I've actually tried to get to Alberta a few different times over the 10 years that I've lived in Canada, and I'm finally here.
And you beat winter.
And I'm barely beating winter. Like
it's cold.
Cold,
today.
snowed, but it's fresh. It's a fresh kind of cold, maybe. Yeah.
It's like the dead time between the leaves falling and the snow coming, cleaning everything up.
Yeah. So it's just the perfect time to sneak in before negative 40 hits. I hear is what happens around here.
It sometimes happens.
It does. Yeah. And I'm sure that affects the market a little bit. We'll jump into that, but that's fun. So Juli, quickly. So I guess on an Edmonton scale.
Yeah.
Where are we in Edmonton today?
So today we're in a community called Radigan Ridge. So we're in the southwest, a little bit towards the center of town. It's been a neighborhood that's been traditionally very popular with families. The schools are amazing. It's close to the river valley and ravine. So lots of pull into here. Over the last number of years.
Awesome. And then how long have you been working in this area? Like what does real estate for Juli look like?
Real estate for Juli.
Yeah.
My first RE/MAX office actually 8 years ago when I started was a few blocks from here, and so this has been a neighborhood that I've really enjoyed working in for a number of years. Our team is quite spread out in the entire Edmonton area because we're very sphere and referral and repeat based. So it's a bit of a blend of, where do people need us, and then trying to stay within, Edmonton metropolitan. We've done a few acreages and a few cabins and things that are a little further out. It's like the drive time is a little bit insane. So, focus would be more central.
Interesting. And so you said RE/MAX, and so I think it's something that's been fascinating as I did my research on the city, as I've dug into the city and run around. RE/MAX seems to be everywhere here in Edmonton. Can you speak to that? Just I know this is a little off script. I'm just fascinated by how much RE/MAX there is.
When I started real estate, I looked like I was 20. I wasn't, but it looked like I was 20. So I needed some credibility. We have 42% market share in Edmonton, which is pretty nearly the highest anywhere in Canada for RE/MAX. We're a bit of a bubble that way. And it was really helpful for me when I started out to have that credibility. Because people look at you and they go, are you straight out of university? I'm like, no, I'm 27 and I'm married and I'm whatever. And as the years have gone by, I've been able to build my own brand and have things kind of take off. But it gave me a piece of people being able to trust me faster because it was such a over and above brand in our town.
So there's 3 major teams that I saw. Are there more than that? How does that work?
It's kind of like us, and then it's a pretty significant drop when we get into some the Century 21s, the Maxwell, the Realty execs, and a lot of those offices locally have gone under rebrands because they've shifted brands over the last year or two. So it's been really kind of weird to watch that happen
in the city
and just be able to say, I'm just going to stay in my stable big bucket.
It's just been fun to drive around. I'm like, and another RE/MAX sign and another RE/MAX sign, and it's other cities that I've gotten to go through. Even small towns like Portage la Prairie in Manitoba have 3 big offices. There's and they're kind of more balanced, even though there's only 24 agents in that town. Which different dynamic completely. But anyway, thank you. That's just, I find that fascinating just for the city. And I think it's also because as this last week there's the conference. So as I tried to reach out to agents, there was no one in the city. That was probably the other piece that was.
There were 800 people at our Western Canada conference this week. So it was a pretty rocking time. You got some fun station over there. I did. I avoided the party drinking because be hungover on stage.
No. Or
you probably
should.
Full well.
And so you got to cover everything up. a lot of makeup and coffee. Yes. Fair enough. So within all that, how many homes are sold in this community every year?
In the Edmonton area, we're about 16,000 for Edmonton and surroundings. So we've got a couple of cities that are almost connected to ours. Sherwood Park and St. Albert. There's a few large towns that are within a 10 to 15 minute drive. So all of that kind of fits within the Edmonton metropolitan bucket. So it's quite significant movement. Every year there's about 3,500 people with licenses in the area. So it's pretty saturated on that side as well. But it's kind of like, anything in life, you have that 80-20 production thing going on of, there's that chunk of us that are doing most of the business.
So within that, how many homes do you sell here? Or units?
So I run a team. We sell about 50 every year. It's been really phenomenal for us, actually. It's enough that we can have our agent that works with me have his own little bucket of work, and then I've been able to focus a little more on listings, a little bit more on stepping into a bit of a coaching space. So it's been a lot of fun.
And with that, I mean, I hear some words on the street around town as I kind of talk to people who know you. What is your vision for real estate?
So I am a real believer in a relationally based, high service, high touch business. And what I've seen over the last number of years is there seems to be this split that's happening where on one side we've got like pay for service, we've got the discount brokerages, it's kind of a like almost do it yourself even if you are working with an agent. And then on the other side we have the really high service, bought into your experience, exceptional marketing, continually stepping it up. And the split just continues to get wider, and I honestly think like the whole middle is going to drop out. People are either going to start saying we're super price sensitive and we want this like DIY thing, or like the bar is going to get set higher. So I am very much on like the track of how do we set the bar higher? How do we raise the standards? Because unfortunately, sometimes we see, agents who maybe aren't as bought into the client relationship and what's best for them as they are in the commission check. Or we get people who don't really know their stuff inside out and backwards, and that unfortunately impacts the entire industry and it impacts people's experiences. And and even you can financially handicap someone for life as an agent if you're not really watching out for them and doing your research, right? So there's a lot of responsibility that we take on as agents, and I think we need to take more seriously as an entire group. So I have a bit of a soapbox about that, but that's been part of what's pushed me into more of, like as mentioned before, the coaching side and building masterminds for agents and saying, how do we empower agents to be more successful, to build their repeat businesses, the sphere businesses, the referral businesses, and just raise the standard and do better by people. So
absolutely. Well, I think I don't think you're the only one identifying these pieces. I've talked with agents kind of everywhere. There's actually a little bit of my own soapbox for a minute. That my family's real estate group at home. My parents have just started coaching the general public. They're like, we're just gonna really help try to raise the efficacy of our local industry to kind of fight that same thing. So
lots of education.
Education's huge. If you were to give a snippet, like a little nugget of education, any agent who's watching, and you're like, guys, please just do this thing.
Sit down with people and really understand their needs. Before you're starting the process, if it's a buyer side, if it's a seller side, it's really important to, just get in the same room with them, or if they're somewhere else from you, get on the phone with them and run through like, hey, what are your expectations? What does life look like for you when this is done? What are you hearing about the market? How long do you expect this to take? What are the things that we can do to really help this experience go well for you? And then also to set some healthy boundaries with them up front. Because I think a lot of agents run into clients who are like, oh, I want to see this house in 20 minutes. And you're like, I can't do that. Or that are, calling about an inspection thing and they want like a new furnace register cover because the one is cracked in the house they're buying. It's like, really? So it's our job to get out in front of a lot of that and make sure they understand the process, make sure they understand the pieces of it, what's normal, what's not normal, what they should expect, what they shouldn't expect, what they should accept, and what they shouldn't accept. So just really digging into with each and every client, and this is the relational piece of being really bought into their experience.
Right.
What are their needs? How can you meet them? And how can you help them stay out of their own way?
So it's almost like a logical empathy.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's fun. That's good. Thank you.
Yeah.
A little nugget of advice. And so if your agent isn't doing those things as a client,
Red flag.
Red flag. Yeah. And so it's kind of also, as you interview your agents, be looking for agents who do these things rather than those who just try to help.
And interview buyer agents, right? So
Yeah.
people that interview, 3 or 4 listing agents because there's so much on the line. And I think what buyers sometimes fail to recognize, that's a failing on our part as an industry, is that there's a lot on the line on the buying side as well.
Well, you need your money to purchase, so
are you paying the right value for it? Are there hidden things that you need to know about? Are there protection issues? Like locally we have real property reports, so they're the surveyors drawings of the land. The amount of agents who don't understand the implications of that piece of the process is a little bit mind-boggling, and it's something that can snowball and turn into a bigger issue for someone who gets into a property. Maybe they sign their rights away on getting this report, and
So what is this report thing?
So essentially what it is the city, when you're building property, you have surveyors come out and they mark where are the boundaries of the land, where are all the permanent improvements. So where's the house, where are the fences, where are the driveways, sheds, anything that's like exterior to the house is on site. And they make sure that there aren't things that go over your property line, like encroachments and stuff. They make sure.
Does that include like trees and things? Or
No.
Okay.
So fences, sheds, driveways, sidewalks, decks. They're also looking for permits. So are there deck permits? Are they required? Is that compliant as a local language, right? So what happens sometimes is we would get agents saying, well, you could just get title insurance and sign off on not getting this report because the seller doesn't want to pay for it. And buyers would be like, oh, okay, well, if you tell me that's what I should do, then that's what I'll do.
Right, because you're the expert in this.
Yeah, and then they go to turn around and sell it. Markets shifted. These things have become more of a mandatory requirement. And then they find out that, oh, I have a deck that doesn't have a permit, and now I need to either fix it or I need to incentivize the other side to take that as is. So it costs them money on that side. And like, God forbid you have something that's a big problem that you end up having to fix. Even if you've got a title insurance policy, those generally aren't easy to get to pay out. You often have to pay for the work first. Like, there's just this whole.
So to avoid that headache, it's better to just do this stuff up front.
Just do the stuff up front, or be careful on what you're accepting through the process. So that's really where the interviewing agents and making sure that you have someone that you can communicate with well and that you can trust is really important, right? Because otherwise, people end up with these headaches, and it's just. It's something that can be completely avoided.
Right, and it's completely avoided. And when we're talking about investments, it's because people's homes sometimes the largest financial investment that they make in their life, right? So and it's honestly, I've been told as I've kind of traveled the country as Canadians, traditional path to wealth is through home ownership. So to screw up that investment, the same way that you pay attention to your financial portfolios, you want to make sure that your home is being treated in the same way.
And it's in some of these kinds of pieces where we actually have our value as an advisor and as a professional is, it's not so much that we're the gatekeepers to information anymore, which I'm kind of excited about. I'm like, yeah, go find all your info online yourself, right? But let me guide you through all of these pieces and the perspective that I have because I'm doing this every day. And because I'm constantly learning and developing and growing the skill set to make sure that you're getting your best return, that we're mitigating risk, that we're marketing the best way that's possible here, we're targeting to the right people. So there's a lot of those pieces that I think sometimes agents miss when they're trying to understand what is the value they bring to the table.
And so that's what you find yourself kind of leaning more into, to be like, I want to help the industry understand that this is where we stand.
Yeah, let's give them the tactical training. Let's help them work on mindset and those pieces that are more the self-work that really impact how you show up and how you're engaged in your own life and your own business, and then how you're interacting with clients as a kind of projection of that. So, yeah, it's exciting.
That is exciting. That sounds really cool. I'm not gonna lie, I'm like, wow, we need more of love this. Please keep speaking.
I agree. I agree, which is, you know, the whole shift for me of saying, okay, well, like I'm still going to lean fully into my real estate business,
right?
But it's also time to empower agents to step up their game.
So as agents are like kind of listening to this as we cover Edmonton, where can they go to like find information?
We actually just launched our landing page for this. It's called thriveonmastermind.com.
Okay.
Or they can find me anywhere on social at Juli Wenger. It's Juli with no E. So that's as pitchy and salesy as I get. But yeah, we're excited. We're going to launch a couple of pods in January.
Cool.
And then it'll be kind of an ongoing, you know, blend of strategy and mindset work. A lot of the tools and the systems that I've developed over the years, because I'm very systems driven. We have more checklists than anyone you've ever seen.
Beautiful.
So yeah, it's a fun new shift that I think will have a bigger impact than we as a team can have just on providing a higher level of our own clients.
Right.
How do we zoom out on that and impact more agents to be able to then impact more people?
So what would you say to people who are like, oh, but Julie, you're just giving away all the secrets?
I think your biggest competition is with yourself. Honestly, I don't think that there is a shortage of opportunity out there. I don't think there's a shortage of business out there. Only so many people are going to take it and run with it. And frankly, if I can build up better agents and we can raise the bar so people are having a better experience, that's going to be better for all of us. Right. And then that middle will drop out, and then we'll be positioned to really like not only take care of people,
but be with excellence,
but to like to do really well at it as well. So yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Anyway, now we're off script.
We are way off script. I feel like this is, I don't know, that's the value, I think, of having these conversations, is because like, this is where your expertise gets to show. So with that, Julie, if we're going to go back on script, we'll do something really fun to reset ourselves. If you were going to be a room in a home, which room would you be? And then why?
Yes. Okay, I thought about this.
Okay.
You sent me the question.
I did, yeah.
So this is interesting. I think that I would be the family rooms. Most family rooms in Edmonton are like, they have a fireplace. So they're kind of like, they're warm. I identify with like this concept of being a tiger, letting the tiger out of the cage. Like I've got this fire where I'm just like,
all right,
let's go. So I like the whole fire thing. Sure. I like the community that usually happens in there and the connection. I'm very wired for relationships, people connection. If anyone on here has studied the Enneagram, I'm the compassionate helper. So it's like the whole people and intuition piece is huge for me. So I like that about it. And I also like the calm, which is the balance of this whole tiger fire thing. It's like, you know, slowing down, being still, you know, enjoying life. And it's a great place to drink wine, and I like wine a lot.
Okay, there we go. That's this too.
Yeah.
I would agree. I was thinking like the second you said family room, I'm like, you know, I think that like a cup of tea, a glass of wine in front of the tiger fire would be.
I film a lot of what we call Wine with Julie on Instagram in the family room.
Nice. Well,
Look
at Wine with Julie on the Instagram below. Loving it. I'm loving it. Yeah. So with that, what is your I hear from our mutual friend Emily that you love to be engaged in the community. Yes. Can you talk to me a little bit about your community engagement?
Yes. I will try not to go on for too long with this, but
small box.
So tying in with this whole compassionate helper thing, I have a bit of a save the world complex. Always have. I've always wanted to take care of people, protect people, create belonging. And so a few years ago, when I was trying to decide if real estate was actually what I wanted to do, because the first few years sucked.
So be aware, new
Don't
agents.
do what I did. I can teach you. No, it's like, where's my passion for this business? And I figured out that kind of along the lines of, you know, if we only help our clients, we're making less of an impact than if we zoom out of it. That only working with my real estate clients wasn't going to make a lot of change in the world with things that really bothered me, like, you know, homelessness, hunger issues. We started working with a group here called Little Warriors. And it's a tough topic, so not everyone wants to jump on board on this, but they treat and prevent child sexual abuse.
Beautiful.
And
That's amazing.
they get no government funding. They've been able to reduce PTSD in these kids by over 50%. They set them up for like a productive life. They are like my heart, right? Like I just love them. And it costs like $25,000 to put one kid through their program. And zero funding. Like if anyone ever watches this from the government, zero funding. Like, get your head on straight. So they have been a partner of ours where we're doing like dollars per deal. We're sponsoring events. We're saying like, how can we as a group commit to put at least one kid through the ranch every year? Because they have this ranch outside of town, and it's a phenomenal facility. And they have capacity for way more kids than they're actually putting through because there isn't the funding to be able to put all the kids through. So we've been doing a lot of work with them. We've been doing a lot of work as well with the Stollery, which is our local children's hospital. So REMAX is a partnership with the Children's Miracle Network.
Yes.
And so we've been able to participate in that one for a number of years. And like as a mom, that place is pretty important to me, right? If anything goes sideways, and we know so many people who have needed the children's hospital, whether for serious stuff or a little bit more minor. So that one's pretty close to our heart. And then we run a couple of programs. One is what we call a charity spotlight. So it's a bit of a social media and online awareness thing that we do that runs 3 months at a time.
Okay.
So right now we're focusing on a group locally called E4C, and they tackle hunger issues. They have school programs for food. They have opportunities for like high-risk youth to work, that kind of thing. So it's a lot of spreading awareness via the social channels that we build, because we put a lot of time and energy and money into building these social media followings. Right. Well, how do we leverage that to actually have an impact? Nice. And the last one that we started about 2 years ago, it'll be 2 years ago in December, is something we call Sold Yeg Supports. So our branding online is Sold Yeg, because Edmonton's airport thing is Yeg, and it's all over. Yeah, YEG.
I think it's so funny.
Yeah, it's like the city's just latched onto that. So we're like, okay, well, if we're Sold Edmonton Real Estate Group, then we'll be Sold Yeg, and it's just taken off. So we called it Sold Yeg Supports, and essentially what it is it's a program that myself and my brokerage offer. Okay. That we donate $250 to charity for every sale that we do. And we let the client pick where it goes. And that's what I really love about it, is it brings people in on the contribution experience. And there's a lot of research out there that when people see others doing good, it inspires them to do it themselves or to do something. Right. And so this really wasn't a marketing angle for us, but it was more of a how do we leverage our success to be able to do something that matters, and how do we inspire other people to do something that matters in turn. Right. So
and also kind of creating a business culture of giving.
Yes.
In that space
yes.
as well, right?
It's one of our 4 kind of core pillars as a company. We went through some Simon Sinek stuff that we'll start with why a couple years ago. I said, okay, why do we exist? And what came out was that we want to empower and inspire people so we can create positive change in the world. And it's like, that's great, but it's not very real estate specific. So what does that look like in our business? So that's where we got into this 4-pillar thing of the how of being all in, which is our relationship piece, and make it better, which is the kind of continuous improvement, always looking for shifts. How can we make our processes of course better, the client experience
being more systemized?
Exactly. We have set a new standard, which is all about let's raise the bar in the industry and integrity, and then the last one's give it away, which is a combination of generosity and education. So this fits within that piece, because it's one thing to say hey, this is what we are, and it's another thing to actually embed it in your corporate DNA. Right. And my team will be like, don't say corporate, you're not corporate. And clearly I'm not super corporate, but
but it's having that mentality of we are a business, this is what we're going to do with our power. That's super cool. Well, thank you for sharing, because I heard that was something that you were involved in. It's important, I think, for people to both see it's yes, you are an agent, you do run a business, right? You are an expert in this space, but you're a human in the community, right?
And that we actually give a crap, because I think it has to come from a genuine space, right? It has to be 100%. Something that you really do believe in and do because it fills your boots, And it's been something for me that when real estate kind of sucks, and we've been in a challenged market here for 4 years, it makes those tough days easier because you know you're doing something that actually is going to have a positive impact.
So let's talk a little bit about the market. Okay. Yeah, this is where this conversation out west gets really exciting. I have learned as I've moved from Ontario across Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and now into Alberta, that that conversation changes in the way the energy level of the conversation happens and the way that we look at opportunity coming down the pipeline. So I think what I really appreciate that I'm getting the opportunity to do is have sometimes more difficult conversations around what's happening in the market. And then to name the things so that when there are people who are watching who might have the opportunity to change and influence a little bit, that we can just name what the problem is. Yeah. So within that, I know that it's like, hey, we're in oil country. Let's go ahead and talk about it. Let's dive in.
Market. So right now we are in the most challenging market that I have personally seen. Okay. I came in 11. So I missed the 2008 slump. As a realtor, I hit it as a first-time buyer. So that's another story for another day. But
did the 2008 slump hit Edmonton? Because I know some other cities it did not.
Hard. Okay. So when I came into the business in 2011, we were in a steady growth period of 2-3% growth a year. It was healthy, and when we got into 2014, we were starting to see prices get back and values get back to about where they had been pre-slump, or close enough to that some people weren't completely handicapped by their homes. Okay. So what happened in 2014 was that we had a bit of an anomaly. We climbed by closer to 5% that year. Okay. And then oil prices dropped in the spring of 2015. And all of the projections were this is going to be a short-term problem. It's going to get better. It's going to get better. It's going to get better. And it's not gotten better. So a few of the things that we've seen come into play have been government changes. Every time that we have an election called, this last one included, it just kills traffic. People they're unsure because we're so, in Edmonton, we're a government town. Okay. There's a ton of government jobs here. So when we had the election in the spring for provincial, there were actually a lot of people that ended up getting laid off. So there was a lot of uncertainty in that time.
So it's not a stabilizing force in Edmonton then? Because I know in a city like Ottawa, it's very much a stabilizing force to have that much.
No, it is. It has proven to be very insecurity driving.
Interesting.
So we had that impact. We've had the oil sands still not doing amazingly. We've had push off pipeline projects, which could create some jobs. And typically with those jobs, we end up with some people moving into the city. We have had net positive migration, but not significant numbers of it. Okay. The other thing that really hit our market hard was the stress test.
Can you talk to me? Because this has been a fascinating little piece that we've talked about from Ottawa to Toronto to Winnipeg to here. So what is... How is the stress test hit?
So for anyone who's not familiar with this, the government mandated some rule changes to mortgages. So we're in a place now where we can't have the 30 or 35-year amortizations, which I'm not necessarily opposed to. Or you have to have at least 5% down, which again I'm not entirely opposed to. Like, it has a short-term impact in terms of people saying, well, I don't have that, so now I can't buy yet. Right. So that piece was tough when we're dealing with a market that's already down. But what else happened is that you'll get a rate from a bank, say it's 3%, and you can qualify at that rate, and you can make your payments at that rate, and everything is thumbs up. Yeah. What the government did was they said, well, that's great, but in case rates go up, we need you to qualify higher.
How much higher?
I don't remember off the top of my head. Okay. Like 1.5% or something. I'm not the numbers girl enough. High enough that it made a significant difference in terms of month-to-month payments, and then it changes your debt ratios with the bank. And now there's this whole chunk of either first-time buyers that now can't get qualified at all because they could afford this rate, which reasonably is probably going to hold for the next number of years, but they couldn't qualify here. Or we've got move-up buyers that now can't move up because they wouldn't even qualify for their existing home if they were to go buy it. So it's put the brakes on the whole economy in terms of housing, because there's all these people that either are not buying anymore, or they're not ready to sell and buy something else because they don't have enough equity built up, especially combined with the down prices over the last couple of years in our market. It's just a perfect storm.
Made a bit of a mess. So what does it look like when it comes to then like inventory?
It's high.
And so like inventory, like maybe how did inventory flow pre-stress test and then post? Is there enough
to use a stat, pre-stress test, our days on market were sitting about 50, like 47 to 55 most of the time.
And that's with the kind of down economy.
That was kind of like a stable-ish, down a little bit, but kind of pre-stress test.
Yeah.
What we're seeing now with that, combined with just continuing people being told it's a buyer's market and their mindset and their whole psychology shifting.
I'd love to actually ask a question about that.
Yeah, is that we're seeing closer to 70 days on market.
Really?
And so it's been a significant increase. We're seeing a lot of properties just not sell. We're seeing neighborhoods, even like the one we're sitting in right now, this neighborhood had been fire for the last few years. Like it just went like this, multiple offers all the time. You didn't even have to nail the price point. And the last 6 months, we've seen even these more central ravine and river communities, which had held their own pretty well the last 4 years, start to take the hits. So, and both in terms of traffic dropping off, there just not being as many people looking, people being hesitant. They're saying, is it going to get worse? Because if it's going to get worse, we don't want to buy yet. It's taking longer. It's tougher to get people through the door. It's tougher to get buyers to make decisions. So, like on the psychology front.
Yeah, I was just saying on the psychology front. So, because I think from one more numbers question, because then psychology. So, like from the numbers front, then you were saying that there's, you said 18,000 homes. Was that what you said?
16.
16-ish. Yeah. Okay, in year over year that kind of are on the market.
That are selling.
Okay.
And then, personally, we've seen probably 80 to 90% of what we list moving, which is pretty good numbers. But we're just starting to hear more and more stories of like properties falling off. And it's tough to say exactly how many don't sell, because we have this tool in our tool belt here of like, we'll pull them off when they get to too close to average days on market, because it changes how people think, and then we'll put them back on right away. So it's kind of a skewed, it's tough to say how many actually just drop off.
Interesting. Okay, so then psychology, like being able to help people understand when a house is stale, when a house is not stale, like what it means to like hold your money. Yeah, it's a buyer's market.
It's a tough balancing act. So a couple things we're seeing right now. One is that buyers have been told it's a buyer's market for so long that they're getting really entitled. So they want a house in a mature neighborhood with big trees, that's brand new, that has no problems, that's like way under market value. It's a unicorn. It really it doesn't exist. Yeah. And so they're taking longer to make their decisions because they feel like, because they're hearing there's so much inventory and it's buyer's market, that they can get that deal. Or they feel like they can find that house. And they're often willing to wait it out, which is not something we've seen before. And they are lowballing more. They're not willing to pay market value. We're finding that our pricing leverage from data points, like other sales, that have typically given us a lot of power on the seller side to say, hey, here's why we priced it where it is and why the value is actually in line with this.
Comparing to other sales.
They're like, we don't care. It's bizarre. So,
like the sellers are saying we don't care, or the buyers are like, we don't care.
And the sellers are like, but here's the,
this is why.
And we don't want to sell under market value. So we're having stalemates with people. We've got buyers asking for all sorts of really like finicky little inspection deficiency repairs that we had not seen before. So it's just been this shift to more and more entitlement on the buyer side. And not all buyers are like that, but as a theme, it seems to be getting tougher there.
So how long has it been a buyer's market? So I guess
since 2015.
So since that kind of dip from oil.
Yeah, and it kind of would do this and stabilize and just and a lot of that has been like, it would dip a bit and then it would stabilize, and then the government would do something, and then it would dip and and it would stabilize, and the government would do something else, and it would dip, and it would stabilize, and then the government would change. And so there's been, not to have like a victim mentality on it, but there's been a lot of outside forces beyond our control that have really shifted and impacted our market.
So when would a traditional time to buy and sell be in the market that has just been completely disrupted in this space? Or has it been?
It hasn't completely been disrupted.
Okay.
It's just become more difficult.
Okay.
I've been focusing more heavily on listings and like the last couple of years. And we're finding that on that front, the buyer traffic still picks up in the spring because that's what people expect. So they create that.
Right.
In the winter time, it's cold. It's kind of gross. Like, unless people are serious, they're not really out looking for homes. So it can still be a good time. And if you've got a really ugly yard, it can be a great time. But we're finding that there is still some value in that, like, springtime, March through June.
For buyers or for sellers?
Kind of for both.
Okay.
In terms of increased inventory for buyers and in terms of increased buyer traffic for sellers. So it's a bit of a balancing act there. And then we see kind of the same thing in early fall, kind of that September back to school space, where we typically see an increase on both sides there.
And summer's kind of dead because people go on vacation.
Yeah, summer's tough. Actually, summer's my least favorite time. I'd rather list a house over Christmas than I would over the August long weekend.
Really?
Yeah.
Because that's like the exact opposite of like listing a property in California. Because like winter, once people are like established in like school year, like you don't disrupt that. But summer is high season. Like that's when everybody moves. It's when everybody sells.
We see a lot of lead up to summer, where people will be like, we're going to buy in, May and June, and then we're going to move in July and August. So there's some of that still does happen. But I don't think that we're a market where there's like a really significant perfect time to sell and perfect time to buy.
Okay.
I think there are some periods to avoid, like when everyone is on vacation, sometimes, but it's really dictated by, I'd say, more of the micro market, like what's your property, what's the potential buyer pool going to be for your property in your neighborhood. Like this neighborhood would be a better one for that March, April, May, June traditionally, because it is very school driven. Where we get into some of the other communities that are not so school driven, it's like, well, do you have a yard that's better to show off in the summer? Do you have, like, what other pulls are coming into those places? And Edmonton is very interesting that way, in that it's like a patchwork thing. Yeah, you can't like blanket the whole area. Yeah.
And so when you're talking about the whole area, then what kinds of homes do we see in this market? So like, I guess at what price points, what styles, from like attached to semi-detached to bungalow to two-story, like what are we talking about when it comes to the Edmonton marketplace?
Yeah.
If you were to kind of paint me a picture for me to understand the city.
Our average price point for single family is about $430,000. Just to give you a bit of a baseline. Luxury starts about $1 million. We've got kind of a couple of interesting buckets. So there's the core of the city that generally was mostly built before like the 90s. And the closer to the core you get, or the closer to river and ravine communities you get, the higher the price points go. And it's also got a quadrant. So it's like the southwest is the highest price point. As you work your way around each, like to the north and to the east, prices drop, and you get to the northeast and it's the lowest. And then like the core is kind of outside of that.
Interesting.
So we're seeing, renovated older homes like this one that are around that 700 mark, that are, 2,500 square feet, attached double garages. We're seeing townhomes with like garages as the basement and just 2 levels of living space that are in that like 300 range. In some of the northeast communities or closer to there, you can get into a single family home, maybe with a detached garage, bungalow kind of style, for around 300 to 350. We also have the perimeter of the city, so all of the new stuff. Which is where a lot of our problems are happening, because there is such an overabundance of supply. That
these are other communities that you were talking about that surround Edmonton?
So this is just like outside of our ring road. The building boom had continued and just build and build and build and build and build. So now we have a saturation problem plus a lot of new buildings. So unlike maybe some of the other communities you've been in, Edmonton just keeps sprawling. And our city council is recognizing that's going to actually create an issue in infrastructure. And we have a bunch of like empty houses sitting around town. There's an opportunity for infill now because some of the core of the city is getting so old. So we're starting to see a little bit of shift there. We're starting to see more millennials want to live more centrally, more of the multi-family push. But in the perimeter of the city and in our apartment condo market, things are really tough right now because there's way too much built.
And so in the apartment condo market, is that like way too much built in the downtown core? Or are you seeing condos built on the
more
outside?
In the perimeter of the city. Yeah.
Okay.
And then a lot of, cookie cutter stuff out there as well. So we've got literally everything in that perimeter, and it goes almost around the whole city, is suffering right now because there's so much available. It's all new. It's not mature neighborhoods. They're all packed in there.
So like lot sizes are small.
Lot sizes are teeny.
So what would you find in a lot size like this property or one in maybe a couple of the communities you're describing versus what you're seeing out there, so that people can
out there, you pretty much have a postage stamp for a backyard most of the time. It's like you might have a little 10 by 10 deck, and you might have like a 10 by 20 yard space and then a garage in the back or something. So it's like, it's tough to get a good sized lot
basically
out
like
there.
a balcony, but on the ground.
I've seen some of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got some challenges. I mean, the stuff with the attached front garages, you'll get maybe more like a 30 by 30 foot backyard or something.
Okay.
But it's challenging. Just in terms of size and having room for families to spread out, and that's part of also where we've seen people want to get in. But then we've also got this demographic that doesn't like to be central and noisy and busy and activity, and like, we'll just drive home to our little suburb life.
Right.
So it's not that there's no demand, it's just that we have a real oversupply.
Interesting. Okay. And so, wow. So I'm just trying to take that in. My mind is just trying to map it visually. But I think the ring road is actually a cool infrastructural piece that you have. I've only seen it in a couple other cities.
Mm-hmm. It was a huge benefit to our city, and they didn't build it wide enough, so now they're having to add lanes and things. But Edmonton has not traditionally been well thought of for our urban planning. It's a really interesting city. It's got a beautiful river valley, but the housing is so ranging in terms of what the options are, where they are, what to get into, what not to get into right now because of the oversaturation issue. There's pieces of a market that I think are more impacted by too much supply than they are by the economy.
Right. So then a question for you. Mm-hmm. With all this, what advice would you give to buyers who are looking to like kind of engage in this oversaturated market in a space where like you, as you kind of labeled it, the buyers are becoming a little bit more entitled. So how can you help maybe give advice that sets expectations? And as people look to buy a home in the next year or so, what should they be expecting coming into the space as an experienced agent? So I would caution them on a couple of options of property. I would really caution them on apartment condo style units in the perimeter of the city. I would caution them to be really careful on pricing in the perimeter of the city. I mean, and generally they need to be careful, but they need to really look at, and this is where, their partnership with an agent is important. How has that market been performing? And what, is a reasonable but fair market value? What, impact might a little bit more slump have? We don't have a crystal ball. I mean, things could improve now. We could see this whole minority government thing shift the dynamic. It could get better. It could get worse. You don't know, right? So I think that waiting it out is not necessarily the right play. Okay. But I think that getting educated about the blend of, what's going to suit my lifestyle, what can I get into that's fair value, that, we don't expect to just drop off, is going to meet my needs for my lifestyle, and then get into the market. So once you're in, make sure you're going to stay somewhere for probably 5 years right now, because otherwise you're a little bit more susceptible. But your own personal property is often not your best investment asset. It's more of a there's value in your use of it, right? There's value in your day-to-day life in it. There's value in the things that you put in that you get enjoyment out of. So I think what we lose sometimes is that side of things. It's not purely the dollars and cents.
And then the other thing that's really tough sometimes for people to latch onto when they turn around and go to sell is, oh, well, the market's down. It's like, well, yeah, but it's down everywhere. So if you're moving across into something else, you're still already in the market. If you're buying in over here, especially if it's a move up, kind of making your money when the market comes back.
Right.
And it's just all moving like this. So, yeah. That's like super concise. But
where would people turn maybe for some of that education?
Us.
But Julie's information's down below, so you can reach out to her. But
no, I think that's really where like asking your friends and family for agent referrals is important. Looking for someone who's doing probably more than 12 buyer deals a year. If you're getting into the buyer side, is smart. So you want to make sure they really know that space.
That would be one a month-ish, right? Like you want someone who's doing a bit more than just one a month.
Ideally, so that they have a sense of what's going on. One of the things I found had a lot of value for us and our clients, because the market's been slow, is that we're in enough spaces that we can compare their experience to other clients, and like, is it in line with that or is it anomalous? So,
as you described, like the way the city's working, if you're only selling like 12 and you've sold one in each kind of quadrant that you were just talking about, you still don't really understand what's happening.
So ask those questions, right? About like, you know, have you worked in this community before? What can you tell me about it?
Right.
And I mean, there's nothing to be, how do I want to put this? It's not to say that you can't hire an agent who doesn't have a ton of experience in an area, because information is out there.
Right.
But just be cautious about how they answer your questions. We actually did a whole blog series that's on our website about like the first time home buyer's guide to everything. And we broke it down into the chunks, like finding an agent, and, you know, dreaming it out, getting pre-qualified, and all of these different pieces, offers, negotiations, what you should expect. So we've got people that are looking for, you know, how do we approach this, especially if you're not in our market. Like, there's a lot of great tips in there.
If you're moving into the Edmonton market
or anywhere. And the goal really was like, even if people don't ever work with us, how do we help elevate their experience, right? So there's a lot of moving pieces, but the trust piece is important, the education piece is important. Finding an agent that values that is key.
So let's see. This is my favorite part because I can cut this part out. Right.
Like that we've gone way over time.
But kind of a little bit. Blows. Cool, actually, from a technology standpoint, here's a question. So you were just mentioning like resources that you've been developing, pieces you've been putting online, the value in like not having to be the gatekeeper of information anymore. How do you leverage technology in your business?
We use a lot of technology. So we use a few things. We have a CRM and task manager. So it holds all of our like custom checklist, client information, sorts it all into, you know, which team member is doing what things, when does that typically happen. So there's a lot of back-end pieces we can use. We use a system called BombBomb that's video emailing. We like to keep in touch with clients that way, because then if we can't connect, you know, in person, there's a lot of communication that gets lost when you can't see someone's face and you only hear their tone, or you're only typing or texting or whatever. So we make a lot of use of that. We use MailChimp. We use a lot of social media stuff, scheduling. Social media has been a really insane top of mind tool for us. So that's been pretty phenomenal. And we started using a lot of kind of like spreadsheety things to compile information and then spit out reports for clients. So there's this program that I didn't know about till this year called Power BI.
Yes, I used to work with Microsoft.
Yeah,
so all the time.
My husband knows how to use Power BI, because I'm not like the tech person to build all this, but we started tracking this year, you know, what are the realtor.ca stats looking like on the back end for how many public people, because that's like the highest real estate traffic site in all of Canada. How many people have seen your property this week? And we can track like week to week. What does that trend line look like? What are your YouTube, you know, home tour video views looking like this week? You know, how's that growth going? How is our personal website visits to your page going week to week? Because then we can, you know, track too, like Facebook boosts and those kinds of things. Are they having an impact? And then there's a bunch of back end stuff on our MLS realtor side with the realtor-driven searches that we can track, favorites and possibilities of, other people
Other
for
agents
your house,
finding homes for their
how many
clients.
search matches are there. So there's a lot of these bits and pieces that give us insight,
Right.
and we can put it in this pretty branded report to give clients and say here's what the traffic was like, here's what the feedback was this week, here's a overview of what the traffic's been like for the entirety of the listing. Here's what all the analytics are looking like. Combine that with what else is happening in your micro market, and give them an update that really gives them a sense of what's going on, even when it feels like there's not a lot to report. So we're always on the lookout for new little tools and bits and pieces to just help elevate that client experience a little bit.
That sounds phenomenal. It sounds like a great system. You're talking about systems.
We're very systems driven.
Very systems driven.
I can be a little ADHD, so I've had to lean on really heavy systems so that I can go do my creativity thing over here and people thing, and then still have everything else
functioning on the other end. The process of building systems for all of this right now, so 100% the work that's put in there is definitely valuable.
Yeah, it's a lot on the front end, but it pays off.
So I think last two questions. What we talk about, I guess. Well, I'm going to skip that question because I think you just answered it. I would say, what makes you different than your competition? You have a lot of roommates in the community.
Yeah.
Would there be anything you'd like to add to that?
Anything I'd like to add?
Yeah.
I think that within the brand, there's a lot of variety. Just like within the industry, there's a lot of variety. So for us, it's really about our why statement, our 4 pillars. It's about really caring about the process, and really walking people through step by step. Here's what's going to happen, and we're partnering with you through the entirety of it. There's also been some of the marketing side that's been different from the bulk of agents in our marketplace. I'm happy that there are a good number of other agents in our space that are also raising the bar in terms of marketing. But a few years ago, we saw most agents not doing professional photography yet, and that's really our gateway to get clients. Okay, let's do the photo, let's do the video, let's do floor plans, because that's the next thing I'm seeing is becoming a mandatory piece. People need to have that control over their own experience when they're shopping from their pajamas on the couch. So, and hitting different personality types and different learning types and different buyers via that first online impression. It's our video tours are music kind of accompanied, and they bring out the emotion for the emotionally driven people. And the floor plans give people who are more
logically
data, controller, that kind of thing, a little bit more experience. And otherwise, I'd say I am a growth junkie.
Okay.
I just I love all things learning, coaching, development, whether that's business books. I do a lot of audiobook. Or personality tools and assessments. I've been diving into those deep this year, and they're such a great tool from a self-awareness perspective, relationships with family, with clients, with team. Really starting to understand on more of an intellectual level. So I've always been kind of wired that way anyway. How people are wired and what drives them and how to meet their needs in a really
meet them where they're at,
way.
Rather than be hey, this is where the market's at, come here. It's no, where are you? How do I engage you?
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. That's awesome. And so I think my last question, Julie, because I feel like we've covered so much that I've loved our whole conversation.
Episode 1 and 2.
Episode 1, 2, and 12 with Juli Wenger here in Edmonton.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I'm loving it. So what is one thing that I didn't ask you that you were hoping that I would ask, or something that we did leave out because our conversation became very organic?
Yeah, it was a little all over the map. You know what I would love to talk about a little bit
Go for it.
is listing staging.
Yeah, please.
So, because I think it's something that sometimes agents miss an opportunity on. Something we started doing a few years ago is investing in a bit of inventory. So when we come into a listing, we'll bring bins of decor items, fake plants, that sort of thing. And so what's ended up happening in this tough market, and kind of the reason I want to give it some airtime, is that we've been able to come into houses that are kind of blah, and throw like fresh bedding on top of beds, put fake plants on tables, just spruce up a little, add a little pop where it needs pop, and soften a little where it needs softening.
Right.
And we found a great deal of success in that, in appealing to a broader audience. And the key piece there is not necessarily that agents need to go and spend thousands of dollars on staging inventory, but that it's really important to guide clients through that process of your home is not going to feel like your home while it's for sale. That is kind of the point, is that people don't want to see themselves in it, or they don't want to see you in it, they want to see themselves in it. They need to envision themselves in their lifestyle. So, we've talked for years about taking down personal photos or like creepy dolls or,
clown paintings.
Closing toilet lids, make sure it's clean. And there are some things that I think people still have not got the message on. Like, but I live here. And it's like, yeah, but no one wants to see how dirty your toilet is. They don't want to see like your bars of soap on the counter and your toothbrushes. They don't want to see the pictures of all of your family because it's distracting. But to take that a level further, it's really important to look at the property and say, how do we kind of show homeness?
Right.
How do we, unless it's like a tear down or something that is not going to draw in emotionally driven buyers, how do we connect with them emotionally by making it prettier, and especially by making it prettier in that first online engagement.
Right.
And then you do want it to match when they come into the house, that they're not going, oh. And we've been kind of on the fence on the whole virtual staging thing for a few years, because I feel like when I walk into houses with buyers and they've seen that, they're kind of like confused.
Right.
And they're like let down a little bit.
Can you touch on virtual staging really quick for maybe people who aren't familiar?
Yeah, so essentially you can send your pictures in, and you can have a company, or you can do it yourself, I guess. I haven't done it, but you can have a company put in like couches and beds and shadows and whatever, so it looks really legitimate. And there have been a lot of agents that swear by it because it gets people through the door, and there may be some legitimacy to that. But what I know to be true from my experience is that then the buyers are expecting this, and they walk in and they get this. It's kind of like when you have a home listed and then the seller moves out, they take all their stuff and it looks great, and you're like, okay, well, we'll leave it. I'm not saying we haven't done that or doing that on one like a few blocks from here right now, but then they walk in the door and they're like, there's this discrepancy between what I was expecting and what I'm seeing, and I have to wrap my head around that before I can start to see myself in space.
Right.
So I'm not sure if it's like the right thing or not the right thing. So
that's fair. So you help people stage their homes then, and say like you're saying, if I'm hearing you properly, what I hear you saying is that by kind of bringing in these pieces, it helps people understand that they are. It's not their home. It's like they're selling it. It's a transition from a home into like this is an item of inventory on the market.
It's really about creating the most approachable place for the most buyers, where the most buyers can come in with their own styles, their own ideas, and just see themselves there or see their stuff there, because they're not distracted by mess or smells or clutter or personal things, etc. So I think the real key for us as an industry is to be willing to have those challenging conversations with people, and you have to gear a little bit to like how much are they actually willing to do and what just pushes them over the edge, because it can be very personal.
Right.
So the empathy piece is a big piece of that. But I think for us to be willing to go in and say, okay, look, this is part of our process. We do a pre-staging like walkthrough, and then you do your homework, which is what are you willing to do to get it ready? And we ask that question first before we do the walkthrough of like how much work are you willing to do, and then we just walk through every room of the house and say, okay, so suggestions. Ultimately, what you decide to do is up to you. But to make this its most saleable, get the best value, here are all of the things we recommend. And if you don't want to invest in your own staging inventory, because that's not for everyone, and it is high cost, and then it sits there, in our case, for the entirety of the listing, is to just walk through with people, like new fresh bedding, like from HomeSense or whatever you've got locally, would really help give this master bedroom a different feel that's going to appeal to more people, so we can get them through the door. So it may be coaching people on what pieces to add themselves. It may be helping them move around furniture, stuff like that. Not like, pick up and lug a couch through the house, but, this could go here. I'd like to see this here. Are you open to moving this there?
Right. And then empowering them to make those choices, but providing autonomy too, to say yes or no. Julie, thank you very much for having me here in this home and meeting me here in Edmonton and answering my crazy emails. It's been fun to get to know you through this, and I hope to kind of stay in touch as we see what happens.
I'm excited to see the progression of real estate en route. It's going to be fun.
It'll be lots of fun. So thank you for joining me in this experiment.
Yes, my pleasure.
Cheers. Best of luck. Cheers. Right. And we will see the rest of you in Calgary as we head south. I know, I'm excited. So please feel free to like and subscribe down below. There's a little button, ring the bell, like us on all of our social pages. So you got Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're here as well on YouTube, like the little button, tell Julie how much you love her. And then if you want any of Julie's information, we will go ahead and include it down here below. Yeah, awesome.
Okay.
See you guys.